My name is Sunny Dragunov. I head the water division at Three Phase Power Systems. We cover water, wastewater, irrigation, and marine applications. And today we're going to be discussing VACON 100 Flow, a sub-brand of Danfoss. And we're going to be talking about what separates this drive and what makes it unique for applications such as pumping and fan applications. Today we're going to focus about pumping, and we're going to be discussing VACON 100 Flow. Now, right off the bat, when Danfoss was designing this drive, they didn't spare any expense. They covered everything that would make a drive potentially fail, and they addressed all of these issues right off the beginning. Namely, one of the best features that we need to discuss for the VACON 100 Flow is the hardware. Hardware is different than every other drive on the market. The software that has been perfectly crafted has addressed every issue that a pump might require. And we're going to go through that shortly here, but what I wanted to briefly discuss here is the hardware. This is the heart of every drive, is what it's made of, the components that are inside the drive, and what makes it unique, and what prolongs the lifespan of drives and in the end motors as well, how they're protected. First of all, to discuss the hardware of VACON 100 Flow. One of the, should I say, best features about this drive is the fact that it has replaced the electrolytic capacitors with thin film capacitors that can be found in the 100 Flow. Thin film capacitors on the DC bus, they do not dry out like electrolytic capacitors. There is a fantastic thing about these thin film capacitors, that if you leave a drive on a shelf traditionally and it's not being used, electrolytic capacitors would dry out, and then a drive cannot be used. This is as simple as it gets. So how Danfoss addressed this is by replacing the electrolytic capacitors of traditional drives with thin film capacitors. We can leave these drives on storage as a spare on a shelf for years, and the capacitors will never dry out. And the lifespan of these capacitors is up to 10 times as long as electrolytic capacitors. Now, this is the first issue that is being addressed. The second fantastic feature inside is sometimes we put drives, as users of variable frequency drives, we can put them outside. We can put them in areas where there is condensation, there is sudden changes in temperature. And one of the things that happens on a minimized micro level inside the drive is condensation builds up inside the drive. So what happens is potentially there is these little circuits on the control boards can short circuit. So what VACON has done, and Danfoss in the design of these drives, is they have actually varnished all the components and boards inside the drive. So what this makes the drive is protected against environmental elements, against condensation, and this is one of the other things that makes traditional drives fail, would be the fact that the boards are not varnished. So what others consider an option, VACON and Danfoss considers mandatory and standard. So all of these things would come standard with the drive. The other fantastic thing about the VACON 100 Flow is the fact that it comes with an EMI RFI filter inside the drive, EMC filter, which traditional drives, when they run, they emit noise, and because of this noise there could be some potential 4 to 20 milliamp analog signal interference, which is inherently eliminated with the VACON 100 Flow. There is also the next thing that we're going to discuss here is the fact that between drives and motors sometimes there is load disconnect switches, and these cannot be operated under load. So for traditional drives, most often than not, auxiliary contacts on this motor disconnect switch are required that would take out a drive, an auxiliary external fault, so that the drive will not work if the motor disconnect switch is operated. In the case of the VACON 100 Flow, we have automatic protection, a setting inside the drive that can tell the drive that there is a motor disconnect switch, and it simply would slow down and speed up if this switch should be operated under load. So the drive is very unique and smart in that respect. In addition to this, this is when it comes to hardware. It's just beautiful. We have 600 volt, 690 volt drives, 480 volt, 380 volt, 240 volt, 208 volt drives, single phase drives. Every low voltage range has been covered with these drives, and we use them everywhere for all sorts of pumping and fan applications. They're just great. The other thing that I wanted to discuss is that the software inside this drive is very unique. Now, what separates this software from these drives to others is the fact that we have a pump controller inside the drive, and we don't need a pumping relay. We don't need these external components that are traditionally used for other regular drives. Now, I would like to point out the keypad of this drive and the fact that how the software that's crafted, it's beautifully crafted, makes it so easy for the user to use. And an end client loves this kind of drive because everything is so seamless. It's intuitive. Just imagine your smartphone. You have the learning curve for this drive is almost zero. You will see in the next video that we're going to show you how to start it up and to do a startup and commissioning on your own. It's very intuitive. You'll find out shortly how this is done. But first I wanted to point out on the keypad, the main thing about the software is how easy it is even to monitor and to operate. When you look at the keypad here, I want to point out that most drives you have to scroll through in order to navigate and monitor different values. Now with this keypad, we can actually monitor up to 9 different things all at the same time. We can monitor 4, 6, or 9 things all at the same time, depending on the matrix on the screen. But here is an example. This is a traditional example. We have, for example, a pumping application. And what are the things that are important for the client to monitor? We want to monitor output frequency. We want to know how fast the motor is running. Great. We want to monitor what the pressure feedback is and what our set point is. The drive actually displays PSI. It can display any number of different monitoring values, flow, pressure, temperature, you name it, we can monitor it. We want to know what the feedback of the pressure is doing in terms of the analog 4 to 20 milliamp input, which can be found in the third spot here. We want to know if the drive is asleep. We want to know if the drive can soft fill our pipes. It actually tells you directly on the screen the status of the PID loop. Then we can also display the motor current as well. In this case, the DC link voltage, it's going to tell us information about the input voltage, which is fantastic. We can also monitor the digital inputs. If we have any selector switches, we can actually monitor their status if they're off or on. This is displayed in this position on the bottom left. We can also monitor the power on time. So a lot of other drives that have external meters, timers, and selector switches, now all of that has been eliminated because everything can be monitored from the keypad. Now here is this example of the power on time. And if we want to flush the lines, we can also monitor that. Now, this is just an example. This is a tip of the iceberg of what is capable to be achieved with this unbelievable drive. The fact that most drive applications require many external components in order for them to work, such as line reactors, EMI, RFI filters, manuals to operate and to troubleshoot and to program, things like RTD relays or thermistor relays, communication protocols such as Ethernet, Modbus, TCP, so on and so forth. everything actually has been embedded in this drive. We have communication on board, the most modern and fast communication, Ethernet, Modbus, TCP/IP, Profinet IP, and others directly built into the drive. And this simplifies things. Before we had so many components outside of the drive, now everything is inside. So this makes it much, much easier and simpler for clients to operate and use the drives. Beautiful, beautiful. The other thing is if a drive is traditionally operated by a PLC may fail. And traditionally what is being done with PLCs is they tell the drive to run at a predetermined speed if the PLC, the main computer, fails. So this drive, the 100 flow, has a potential of having its own PID controller directly inside. And some of the things I want to list that are special about this drive is that we can mimic what the PID controller can do. Namely, when a pump starts, we want to be able to soft fill the pipes if we have our own PID controller inside the drive. We want to control the pressure of a pipe, we want to control flow, we might want to control temperature, so on and so forth. Let's imagine we're controlling pressure in a pipe. When we start the drive, we could tell the drive to slowly fill the pipes. So we have a mode inside called soft fill. We have another capability that we're going to go through at training time. We can detect if the pipe is leaking. For example, if we're pumping water in a pipe and there is leaks, we can detect when that happens and we can alert and alarm the owner or the operator of the drive very, very easily. We can also control a jockey pump. We can do a pre-charge. There is many other different things that this drive is capable of without the necessity of a pump control relay or a PLC. So the combination of all of these features makes this drive unbelievably simple to use. This drive is designed with the idea that you do not need a manual to operate it or to program it, and we'll demonstrate why this is. If there is any fault that ever occurs with this drive, we will see it on the screen, the fault, but not only the fault. Traditionally, people will go to the manual to find out what the cause of the fault is and how to fix it. This drive will actually tell you the cause of the fault and how to fix it directly on the screen. It is that smart and that easy to use. And this is why we love using it. Any chance, an opportunity, an application we have, VACON 100 Flow is definitely the way to go.